Hey guys, welcome back. Ricky here. Alright, so as you guys may know, I have just returned from a trip in Japan, and it was the most amazing trip I have ever taken. Japan is one of the most incredible countries I have ever been to, and so today will be not about Japan, but about the Yaxell factory tour. So you guys may have heard that I have had a personal guided tour at Yaxell, and it is one of the most impressive factories I have been to, I have ever seen. There are a few disclaimers that I need to kind of put out there. Yaxell did something that they really never do for anybody in public. Very few people get to tour the factories in the fashion that I did. And so there were a few things in the tour that they have asked me not to include in the video. And so whatever I can, I have included in this video. The very first step before any knives actually gets worked on or grinded is the heat treatment process. So the first way is a traditional oven where knives rotate on a conveyor belt like device, and they get heated as they pass through the heating elements inside of this conveyor belt. That technique is very common. You can get a lot of knives done that way, and it's the most cost effective. The second way, it's much more controlled and much more expensive, but they actually go and cook in a massive submarine looking device and actually cook for a very precise number of minutes, and then they actually go and cool for a precise number of minutes as well. This process is much more expensive, and you can only produce a very small number of knives in a single day because of the time constraints that these machines are under. And so Yaxell produces all their knives this way. Once the knives are cooked in this oven, the cooling time is just as long. So these knives sit in rows and batches to cool under a fan, and they're also pressed at the same time. So these knives, well, they're actually not knives just yet. They're technically just templates and cutouts of a blade shape. And so they actually get straightened by hand. Yes, every single blade gets straightened by hand. A trained technician who's been doing this for a long time literally looks at every single blade and straightens them by hand. It's a very strenuous process which can only be done by somebody very experienced. I did ask him how many blades he can do in a single day. He said 2,000 blades at the peak. The entire time that I'm there, he's doing this with a smile. So after all the plates have been straightened, they go into the grinding machine, and there is a carbide diamond plate that literally will grind away at a certain angle the entire profile of the blade. So the blade's overall thickness at the spine all the way down to the cutting edge is essentially set on this machine here. Now the next step is the welding process. The welding takes that billet, that blade billet that we just saw, and puts a handle on it. This process is done fully by hand. A technician will sit down and weld each individual handle to the blade. Now the first major inspection is the straightening of the blades from the welding process. So this technician will straighten the blade up before it goes on to the next step. These next few steps here are what makes Yaxell the quality of knives that they are. Every single part of the knife from this point forward is sanded, polished by a different machine. There is literally a grinding machine for every part of the knife. The spine gets its own polishing machine. As a matter of fact, the handle will go through about 6 different machines between the shaping, the rough grinding, the medium polishing, and then to the fine polishing of the handle. Every single knife from Yaxell goes through this process. It's a very long process. This process here alone takes over 3 weeks. So all the leftover metal from the welding gets ground down in this stage here. All the hard corners, the handle cutout, the spine of the knife, so all of the hard edges of the knife's handles and blades should be removed before moving on to the next stage. After that process, each knife is inspected by hand and eye before moving on to get their handles installed. The micarta handles at Yaxell are all installed by hand, and then every single knife is left to rest at room temperature until the glue cures, which is about 2 days. And by allowing the glue to cure this way, the handles don't warp over time, and so you don't have any sort of deformation in the glue or the handle. So after the glue is cured, they start grinding on the handles. Now before coming to the Yaxell factory, I thought that all of the scales for the handles were essentially made in a mold, and then they take the mold out, attach it to the handle to the tang, and then they simply glue and then maybe do a really quick buffing around the handles. That's not the case. Now every single handle goes through about 6 to 8 stations between your shaping of the handle, to the coarse, to the medium, to the fine, and then the fine polishing of the handle and the bolsters. And so a significant amount of work goes into making the handles as comfortable as they are. At these stations, every single technician does one thing really well. One person shapes, one person grinds, one person polishes, and every single handle has its own specific machine that it goes through. Now, if you guys have watched my videos in the past, even way before I have visited the Yaxell factory, you'll know that I have always liked the Yaxell handles because they are so comfortable to hold. This process I'm showing you explains exactly why that is the case. So after all of that, the knives finally get their profiles cleaned up and ready for sharpening. And finally, before every single knife gets sharpened, the master sharpener takes the batch of knives he's about to work on and gives them just one last touch on the buffing machine. Good to see you. Good to see you. This is Fujita, master sharpener here at Yaxell. Yeah. I thought they would have 10 sharpeners, all hand sharpening one knife at a time. But it's not that way. They have 2 master sharpeners and they have these massive grinding stones, and each knife literally takes about 20-30 seconds of sharpening and then they're done. Now just watch this brother here. This is Fujita-san. He's been sharpening knives for a very long time. As a matter of fact, he was a master sharpener at Miyabi and he was recruited by Yaxell. And so this guy here is literally one of the best sharpeners in the world. Just watch him work. He is so smooth and so controlled, it's mesmerizing.
So the heel, you do this on...
Yeah, like this. At the end of his grinding, he took off.
And the polishing is very much the same way. He pulls it once or twice on each side, and he's done. Okay. After sharpening and polishing, all of the knives get cleaned up, packaged, and shipped. However, the knives using SG2 steel, so the Go, Super Go, Ypsilon, and the Enzo SG2 all get an additional step, which is hand etching. Every single stroke of the Japanese kanji is done by hand on these knives. It is mesmerizing to watch. It takes about 6 minutes or so for them to do one knife. It's a significant amount of time that is actually invested into just one knife. Literally, these hand etchers can only do about 10 knives an hour. I mean, that's how much work these things take. And so you have a whole different appreciation when you see how these knives are put together. Only 5 people on Yaxell's production team are certified to do hand etching. So Fujita-san, the master sharpener, is the only person who can sharpen a knife at Yaxell at that level and also hand etch. He is literally a Renaissance man. So after the knives are finished with hand etching, they go get cleaned and they get packaged and shipped out. And the last part of the facility is quality assurance. Now, quality assurance, it's interesting because even though it's the last stage of the tour, quality assurance happens at every single stage of the production process. So between the grinding and the polishing and welding, between the sharpening and the packaging, there's also QA. And because of this process, it takes 6 to 7 weeks for a batch of knives to be completed. And that is why Yaxell is only able to produce between 500 to 1,000 knives a day. I know that sounds like a lot, but it really isn't. There are factories in China that are able to put out as much as 5,000 to 10,000 knives in a single day. And so they're producing 5 to 10 times as many knives as a company as Yaxell. My history with Yaxell goes back about 10 years or so. The very first Japanese knife I've ever purchased was a Yaxell. It was an 8-inch rod and a 7-inch slicer from the Ron series as well. And so it's really cool to kind of come full circle to have my very first Japanese knives being Yaxells and then having a personal guided tour by them as well. So to me, this was a very special visit, and I can honestly say Yaxell makes some of the best knives in the world. Every single step of the production process at Yaxell is designed to deliver the highest quality knife possible, bar none. And I want to take this opportunity to thank the folks over at Yaxell for opening their doors to me and for trusting me to record and to give me free reins in your factory. So I know that was a huge risk. So thank you, Gato-san. Oh, Gato-san. No. Hello, sir. Hello, good morning.
Thank you. Very welcome.
Hi. Ansai? Yes. Ricky. Hello. And Yamada-san, Enzai, Alex. And I know you guys are wondering, what is their showroom like? Well, in the next video of the Yaxell factory, I will take you through their glass showroom. Yeah, I'm not kidding. A showroom pretty much made of glass and knives. Alright guys, well that will be it for this video. I'll catch you in the next one.